comparison creep is a real thing. The Facebook thing is a perfect part of this. You see everybody's life how they want you to see it, but really what's going on, right? And that's a big thing is the grass isn't always greener. You're seeing a few things happening, but the thing is if you're trying to get that life, there's an attachment to that. You don't know what their bills are. You don't know what their debt is. You don't know what their life looks like.
No. And you may see, this guy that graduated at the same time as me, he and his wife are both vice presidents already.
Yeah. Great.
And you dive in a little bit deeper and you find out that everybody at that company is a vice president.
Yes. Everybody. You're a vice president.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Kenny Klaus, and this is State 48 Homeowner.
Welcome back to the State 48 Homeowner Podcast. And today we're going to be talking about the difference between smart consumers and normal consumers. And I want to welcome back Caroline Kelly. How are you doing?
Good. Doing great. How are you?
Excellent. So would you rather be known as smart or normal?
Smart, wouldn't you?
I think most people do.
Yes.
One of my favorite shows is Jeopardy.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a lot of people out there that if they had the opportunity and they know that they could answer all the questions right, they would love to be on Jeopardy.
Right.
I think there's a lot of people that would be afraid to be on Jeopardy because they get all the categories they know nothing about.
Yes.
And then everybody on TV would look at them and think, oh, they're not that smart.
Yes.
But what's crazy, even the people that get things wrong on Jeopardy were incredibly smart because they had to pass all the little tests they had beforehand.
Sometimes being smart is learning from the failure, right?
Exactly. And that's one of the biggest frustrations, and it wasn't as big of a frustration for me to take action on it and actually write the book, but it was when my kids were in elementary school and trying to get my daughter to understand the concept of failing forward and found that there was no books on failing forward that were geared towards kids. No. And at some point I probably should write it. But it's a concept that we have to understand, that the people that are, when we look at the difference between normal and the people that are doing things that are smart, it's people that are actually thinking through their actions based on things that they've learned in the past.
Right. And here's the thing. If it doesn't challenge you, it doesn't change you, right? So it's going to challenge you. It's going to change you. But you have to embrace that ability to do that, right? That's really what failing forward is really embracing, hey, I did something, but I don't have to carry that for 40, 50 years. No,
and that's kind of when we look at the credit reporting and your FICO score. If the success for everything wasn't in failing forward, everything would stay on your credit forever.
Yes, it would.
But guess what? You would never be able to get into the high 7s, into the 800s on your credit score if things didn't roll off your credit report. Because everybody has made stupid decisions in their lives. Everybody has made mistakes before in their lives. And yet, it's like you said, it's just learning from those experiences and making some changes and not just acting without thinking.
Absolutely. I mean, there was a time that there's a major department store who shall not be named. It's kind of, I call it the enemy. They will remain nameless. But they actually, I paid 1 day late on a payment as I was getting out of debt, right? And they charged it, and they charged it to my credit report. And that sat there. It had to sit there for like 2.5, 3 years, right? So it's sitting there, and every time I'm looking at that, I'm like, there's that thing. Now, it could have overcame me, and I could have lived in that moment continually forever. Or I could say, you know what? I made a mistake. I'm never doing it again, and use that to drive. Every time I looked at that, that drove me forward towards my goal of never having to do that again. Yeah. And it's really a big part of this is failing forward and really thinking through, what is this really like? Is this really the moment, or is this what my whole life is going to be?
Yeah. And it's crazy. You brought up something negative on there. Yeah. It doesn't take that much time for things to roll off.
No, it does not.
When you look in perspective, how many times have you been sitting on Facebook and you're scrolling through, and somebody posts a picture of their kid finishing first grade and graduating into second, and you're like, that kid's like 8?
Yes. You're like, wait a minute, they were just born. I remember.
Yeah, exactly. But guess what? That's about the same amount of time for stuff to, if you make a change, everything's completely, and during that time, things that's just when it rolls off the credit report. You've already seen some serious growth in that time on your credit and in life and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. It doesn't take till that time goes off. It's just in between, you're working towards it and you're improving completely every day.
So we were talking before, we said, okay, what's the difference between a smart consumer and a normal consumer?
Yes, you did.
and you said it incredibly well. It's just the normal consumer is going to take action. Yeah. And they're going to do things. Whereas the smart consumer is going to be thinking before they act.
Yeah, it's taking the time to, the normal consumer just reacts to life, reacts to the moment, just clicks the button, just does whatever they want. The smart consumer is one that says, okay, is this something I really need right now? Is this helping me in my life? I mean, we've all made these purchases that we've bought something and said, by the time it gets to you a day or two later, you're like, what was I thinking? Right?
Or if we're shopping off the end caps and the impulse racks.
Correct.
So an end cap is when you have the big long row of shelves in the store. At the end of there, they'll have stuff on the end, which is generally some great deals. Yeah. I'm not going to lie. But you're walking past them in a direction of what you had on your list, and you see that stuff. Most cases, that stuff was not on your list.
No,
and it's a great deal.
Yeah.
But it wasn't on your list. Right. And then what do we have? The impulse rack is what you have at the checkout stand.
Right.
And there's a reason why they put that stuff there. Because it's not selling in the place that it's at. Because no one's going, man, I got to walk across the store to get this pack of 4 lighters. Or I need to go across to get a Score candy bar or a pack of gum or some breath mints or I need to go to the magazine section and get this special edition on the Queen.
Yes. Or here's a big one.
Did you see how much those things cost? They're like $20.
They're $20, yes.
For like a little magazine.
Yes, because it was a Queen.
But people pick it up and they buy it, and there's no way. If they were, I'd like something on the Queen, and they go on Amazon, and they find that there's a $3 ebook. Yeah. And then there's that. Why would I spend $20 on that? And yet you grab it at the impulse rack and put it on the. Yeah.
And a big one for me, that's my biggest pet peeve, is the soda. The soda refrigerator. Love a couple of those companies and brands, but you went through that whole store and you went down a whole aisle of soda. That's a 2 liter for the price of what that little thing is, and you didn't want it, but you're in line and it's right there and you just get it, right? That's a big one too.
Yeah, the more packaging involved, the higher the cost, which is why when you go to Costco and you get that big tub of oats that you'll never use in your life.
Yes.
It's so much less than going and getting stuff from the grocery store. It's because the packaging costs as much as the product.
Yeah. Hey everyone, this is Kenny Klaus with Klaus Team Real Estate Solutions. We know there's a lot of confusion in today's market, whether it's billboards, TV, radio, mail. Everyone's trying to get your attention. They offer one lane, where at the Klaus Team, we have over 20 different programs we can help you navigate through to find out what's best for you. And remember, we work for you, they work for themselves. We're here to represent you and make sure you have the best experience possible.
Visit us at klausteam.com/call-us-first. So what are as people are in that normal zone, what are some of the biggest pitfalls that keep them in the normal zone versus evolving into a smart consumer?
Well, a couple things on this is really knowing what they want, right? When you know what you want and you know your values as a consumer, this is important to me or my family, you can weigh that against the purchase. So if you say, our family loves baseball, in our family we love baseball. My husband's like World Series Diamondback thing, right? He's all on that when it happens. So his situation is, that's a high concentration for us. If we can go to a baseball game, we'll go there. Concert, we'd weigh it against that, right? So is it in the value system of your family, right? Don't go to everything just because it's there.
Yeah.
It's what's in line with your values. Because if you make a dinner, you don't go into your pantry and pull everything out of the pantry and throw it all in a pan and say, this is what dinner is, right? You use what you need. And a smart consumer does that. They say, what are we doing? What's going on in our life this month? What do we want to do? And if there's 5 or 6 options, which ones are the most important right now to get us to our big life goals of maybe retirement, purchase of home, need a new car, right? Are those things getting taken care of? Yeah. Because the biggest thing I think is I kind of call it the financial pyramid, is we have that base foundation of, a roof over our head, right? Clothes on our backs, food, right? Transportation, especially where we live. We need transportation to get around. So that's a big part of this most of the time. So what does that look like? And as the pyramid goes up, it gets smaller and smaller. And those other items fall in line with that. When you make a small item on your pyramid, the base, you now don't have a structure. And when you don't have the structure, you can't put the support. Yeah. And when you don't have that, then it kind of collapses. It funnels instead, and now you don't have enough to pay those essentials in your life. Yeah. And now those other wants have taken over your life. So a smart consumer says, where is this line in this pyramid here?
I think a smart consumer is okay with their own scale of things. Social media has brought us a lot of things.
Yes.
For one, it's not really that important to go to a high school reunion anymore because you know how everybody's doing.
Yes.
But some of the pitfalls is we feel like we're competing with other people for how we're vacationing, how we're building memories with our kids. And yet, I know my situation is different than when I was growing up. My parents did everything that they could to create some great experiences, and we sure had them. And they didn't spend as much money as I probably do on the experiences I build with my kids, and yet we had incredible experiences, and we were able to do some really, really fun things and go some cool places. You are able to do that. Don't feel like just because you're taking your kids to the mountains instead of to Hawaii that you're not providing the same level of experience at building as other people in your social feed. And Absolutely. You can still go do those things, just it might not be the season for that.
Correct.
It might be the season to scale things back for this year.
Yeah.
And to save those things for another day.
But the thing is you're still spending time together with friends and family. You're still having fun. You're still doing these things. But exactly what does it look like?
And what are your goals? Well, let's meet those goals.
Yeah.
If we dive into, what are your goals? Well, I want to take the family to Hawaii. Okay, why?
Yeah.
Well, I want to have I want to spend time together. Does that have to be in Hawaii?
Yeah. Does it have to be in Hawaii?
Now, there are times that it's a great season for it.
Yes.
I took my kids to Hawaii. We were coming out of COVID. Everything was super, super cheap. And it was probably one of the least expensive vacations I've ever had.
Yes.
But it was in that time. I couldn't go do it again now for that price. And so, we do take advantage of those opportunities too, but not to the scale where it's going to make a negative impact on me, or if I'm wondering how I'm going to pay my mortgage or my those things. Am I still making progress? Then that makes sense. And I think that's the difference. The normal consumer is going to look at that Hawaii deal and say, I have to go do it. Put it in. And a smart consumer is going to weigh all the options and say, is this still the right season? It is a great deal. And I think that's where a lot of people are. And when we talked about with the impulse racks and the end caps is, yes, it's a great deal, but how many times did people come back and their spouse has said, you came back with a ton of stuff. Yeah, well, I saved $200.
Yeah.
But you spent $2,500 to save $200. You didn't save $200.
Don't spend to save. Yeah. Don't spend to save. That's a big one. But here's the thing is comparison creep is a real thing.
It is.
And when you're saying that, the Facebook thing is a perfect part of this. You see everybody's life how they want you to see it, but really what's going on, right? And that's a big thing is the grass isn't always greener. You're seeing a few things happening. But the thing is if you're trying to get that life, you have, there's an attachment to that. You don't know what their bills are. You don't know what their debt is. You don't know what their life looks like.
No. And you may see, this guy that graduated at the same time as me, he and his wife are both vice presidents already.
Yeah. Great.
And you dive in a little bit deeper and you find out that everybody at that company is a vice president.
Yes. Everybody. You're a vice president.
Yeah.
I like
but
that.
Everything is, there's more under there. So don't get too crazy with social media. Yeah. What are some other pitfalls? I know credit cards is up there.
Credit cards can get up there because here's the thing is there's a Harvard study out there on swiping. Basically the swipe, right? And they know it too because it's a Harvard study, right? So the companies know it. When you spend like that without purpose or intention and you just swipe and don't even think about the purchase, there's no handing, giving, and taking. So if you give $20, if I gave you $20 and you gave me something back, I lost $20 to gain something. When you swipe, you hold on to your card, you swipe it.
And you get it back in the same condition.
You're holding it. You never got it back. You're just holding it, right? And now they've given you something. So in your brain, because you did that, you were rewarded. And that's kind of what happens here. So on average, people spend about 10 to 15% more on purchases because they're not paying attention to what they're purchasing.
On those specific purchases. Now, I would assume that when we talk about recurring subscriptions, that is even much higher.
Oh, that's an out of sight, out of mind. When a lot of people I work with, the first thing we do in the first month is we look at where is your money going, and we pull up those credit cards, right? And they're like, "Oh my gosh, I'm paying twice for the same subscription because I didn't even realize I had it." And there's a lot that happens when you're going through this because it's autopilot.
Yeah.
Life gets busy. You got something, it's on the card. Now in your mind, you're like, it's taken care of now. But then you're moving on to 1,800 other things that are happening in your life. And you forget what that was. And you forget, every month, this is going to be coming out.
Yeah. And if on certain things, you may not even be able to decipher what it was that you bought. And
Correct.
You may not even remember what it was.
Or even know how to get rid of it.
Yeah. The Klaus team is different. With the Klaus team, you have someone on your side. Where you live and make memories is important. We have more unique strategies than anyone else to help you accomplish what matters most to you. We can help you with traditional real estate as well as other options such as our lease purchase programs. We can help you buy first then sell, and we can bring you instant offers. We're here to help our neighbors achieve the American dream and help them build wealth through home ownership. For more info or to start your home search, visit us online at klausteam.com. So there's a cost involved of just buying stuff that we normally wouldn't do or spending
Correct.
more money. But the actual purchases, when we talk about, the cost of using credit cards, the actual purchases is often, if people are using them irresponsibly, for people that use them responsibly, the bulk of your credit card payment is the things that you bought.
Right.
For people that are not using it responsibly, could be a tiny part of what you end up paying on that card over the life of it.
Oh yeah, your minimum payment, if you think your minimum payment is going to cover the interest for that month and then some, that's not what they're setting you up for. They're setting you up for, hey, here's $25 a month. But the interest could have been $30. So you're not even covering that, right? And knowing that's important.
And it's also for consumers that aren't aware, there is statute of limitations to debt. And any time that you make a payment, you are starting fresh on that statute of limitation. And so they love minimum payments because if you can just send us $5, that'll show some, you've just opened up that statute of limitations on that debt, reset it to zero. For good. And so that, they want to keep those minimum payments small so that you're never getting out of that statute of limitations on debt. You're often not even covering the interest. And then, interest rates on credit cards are astronomical.
Correct.
They're huge. And, I will tell you, if I was to carry a balance on a credit card, the only time would be, no payments for 18 months. And you set up a schedule and live by it to make sure that you take advantage of that and free up your capital to use in other places. Other than that, I can tell you I have a couple credit cards. I do not carry a balance. I love my Amazon card. I do stuff on Amazon. I'll spend stuff elsewhere, but I get that the Amazon points do good. Now, we're hearing rumors that a lot of places are just going to get rid of points. I won't use a credit card anymore. I'll keep one for hotels and things like that when I need one. But the only reason I use it is I get points. But I learned that I have to pay those things off. And I learned in college.
And you've done a smart consumer thing here because you understand it's a product and this is how it works for me. A lot of normal consumers are, this product's here to help me.
And if you cannot pay it off at the end of the month, don't put it on the card.
Don't put it on the card.
If there may be an emergency. That's a great thing that cards are for, but there has to be an escape plan because there's other ways to get out of emergencies than to do that. But, I remember Cal State University, San Bernardino, walking by the bookstore. One of my first days there as I had done community college first. I was there finally as a junior, walking in, and there was a table, and it was from Visa. And they had all these shirts and hats and things that I could get for free by signing up for a card. And I did. And it destroyed me because I had no idea how to use a credit card. All of a sudden, I was able to buy things that I normally couldn't buy. And, that was something that lasted for years. And, it was back in the day too where we wrote checks. And a check could carry you over a couple of days if you were buying groceries and you didn't have the money in your account. And all of a sudden that would get away from you. And so, any of those forms of credit that you don't actually have the cash to cover it now makes absolutely no sense to, put those things on. Cash is key. If you can use cash, great. If you do not have the discipline to make sure that a credit card is paid off at the end of every month, we shouldn't be using them.
Right. And that's the biggest problem is it gets away. And then the interest rate rises, right? They just have this interest rate rise has been happening on a regular basis. What people don't realize, and part of it is being a good consumer in this aspect of understanding what you've purchased and bought into. In this situation, when the federal interest rate rises, not only do other loans and stuff rise, your credit card percentage rises, and they don't have to tell you. They can raise it. So people don't even know what is their credit card's percentage. What is that going to look like, right? What happens if I do the 0% down and I don't pay it in that time? You have to have a plan here.
And in most cases, that interest rate reverts back to day one.
Yes, absolutely. Back to the beginning balance that you agreed to. Yes. And there's also a transfer fee sometimes of 3%. So you got to remember that. So if you don't get it done, people are like, oh, I can go to 3%. But here's the thing. If you don't get it paid off, you pay that retroactive 30% plus the 3%. And they're betting that you won't because they have science on their side.
Why would they give you free money up front for 0% down? They're betting that you're going to be paying a lot of interest.
Correct. And that gets into that vicious cycle of that. Another thing about smart consumers over the normal consumer is the smart consumer starts to bet on them to help them solve their own problems, right? Like, you can do this. You can. What's this look like to purchase this way? And what are the pros and cons to this? Rather than just being like, okay, I'm just going to get it and figure it out later. And really working through that purchase process is important to do to be a good consumer and smarter with your finances every day.
Yeah. Another big difference between the normal consumer, that's just looking to use credit to acquire stuff, and the smart consumer, the cost of credit, the better you are at using credit, and sometimes the best way to use credit is to not use credit. And, yes, keep some accounts open so that you still have credit, but not use it. And what people will find is that the less they're actually using the credit, and they're still keeping those accounts open and those kinds of things, their credit score is rising.
Yes, it does.
Because it's showing that you're not abusing things. You're not, the difference between the credit you're using and the available credit is huge. We're keeping low balances or zero balances, but we still have the credit available to us. We're, the more you do that, the cost of credit goes down.
Correct.
And the rates to borrow money go down.
Correct.
And where you'll have somebody that just thinks that, I was there. I thought, why would I get a car loan? I felt like I was paying twice for the car that I had.
Yes.
Well, back then, my interest rate was different than it is now.
Yes.
Now, as a smart consumer, my mindset has shifted. It actually makes more sense for me to buy a car at a low interest rate than to use cash because I'm also an investor. And I can use that cash and get a return that's much higher than the interest rate that I'm paying on the loan.
Right.
But it took decades for me to get there from between the 2 points, because my goals had to be set. My drive towards those goals had to be much different.
Yeah.
My habits and the things that I would not allow had to change. One of those things that I mentioned before, I will not carry a balance.
Yes.
That was a decision I had to make. I will not carry a balance on a credit card.
Yeah.
And so now, and it was weird the first time I went to go after I had decided I'm just going to pay cash for vehicles. And then I was educated and saw and realized I could turn that money around and make, double, triple that interest rate on investments. And so then at that point it made sense. However, if there wasn't a possibility for me to make that payment consistently, that wouldn't have made sense. Right. If I wasn't investing, if I was keeping money in a checking account or a savings account, that wouldn't make sense. And so you'll hear things from people and they'll go, oh yeah, it makes financial sense to use an auto loan. If you're not investing, it makes no sense.
Yeah.
Buy in cash.
Right.
If you're if all the ducks aren't in a row and you're not using things effectively, if you can't get very, incredibly low interest rates on things, it doesn't make any sense. Right. And so, watching, I realize this is a podcast, YouTube video, and don't just watch those and just accept everything that everybody says. It's different for everybody. And that's why people have a financial coach that can say, well, that might work well for somebody that's an investor, but for you, you're not really investing anything. It doesn't make any sense at all for you.
And like you said, the one thing you said that's great about all this is you sat down and looked it through. More people will hear this that type of story and say, oh, you did it, I can do it too. But finances may look different, right? Situations may look different. You've got to look at that and say, is this the best option for me? Not just because it's a good option for you, this person, it's going to be a good option for me. And I used to be normal. I used to be like, oh, this person did this and I can do this too. When I started to look at, well, of course I'm smart now, because I'm going to say, that's great that it's working for you, right? And I'll evaluate that if I want to do that. And if it works good for me, I'll do it. If it doesn't, it doesn't, right? And that's part of the situation here is what does that look like for you as an individual when you're purchasing and where you are.
And what phase of life are you in?
What phase of life are you in?
Are you struggling?
Are you struggling?
Are you at the point where you're not paycheck to paycheck and you are able to cover things? Are you to a point where you're in a group of people talking about wealth building?
Yes.
Are you at a point where you're an investor? Are you, there's steps along the way. And yes, there is a way to jump from step 1 to step 8.
Yes.
And that's to win the lottery, and hardly anybody does that.
Well, here's
everyone
the problem.
else has taken steps.
You've heard the saying, right? The higher you go, the harder you fall, right? So the biggest thing is you can go from 1 to 8 by winning the lottery, but how many of those lottery winners a year or 2 years later are back down to 1?
They never learned the lessons. They
never
learned the habits, the behavior.
Correct.
They never learned they never set absolutes for themselves.
Correct.
And we have to do all those things, or we're going to stay normal.
Correct.
And I know that there's a lot of people that just don't want to be normal.
No, there's a lot of people that don't want to be normal, and I don't want a lot of people to be normal, because it's really exciting to be empowered to say, this is what's right for me, and I'm doing what's right. So you don't have this underlying tension every day of, oh my gosh, where's the next thing going to happen? What's the next thing that's going to go wrong? You don't have to worry about that anymore, because you've taken care of it. You know what you have, you know what there is, and you're not leveraging everything you have against one little bet over here. And that's a big part of it.
So if people want to stop being normal,
yes, be smart.
What steps can they take with you? How do they get a hold of you?
They can get a hold of me two ways. The website is ramseycoach.com/fit financial coaching, or they can reach me by text or phone at 602-909-0112.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for spending time with us this week at State 48 Homeowner, the ins and outs of owning an Arizona home. You can connect with us for more information, submit topics you'd like us to further discuss. You can see relevant videos, give us feedback, answer your real estate questions, and more at state48homeowner.com.